We're moving away from cell builders. Okay. Okay, so we've now mastered the whole cell builder thing, and we're now at the point where we need to figure out how to get the larva in these cell builders. And so that's what this is about. This is a picture from QueenRearing.com. It used to be one of the, maybe one or two of the only companies out there that sold instrumentally inseminated queens. There's Latshaw and Glen Apiaries. Glen Apiaries is working with the USDA distributing VSHP. So that was the source of the first VSHPs I ever got. Really good company. They kind of got old and they decided to kind of stop doing that. But they still maintain this website. There's lots of really good information on that website. And I borrowed that picture straight from their website. It's another good quote, and I think it's super important for the folks here. I'll just read it to you. Some people are experts at grafting, expert grafters from the start. Like Christine, she picked it up almost instantaneously. So some people are expert grafters from the start. Others need more practice. Grafting is what prevents most people from attempting queen rearing. So that's his statement. Grafting is what prevents most people from attempting queen rearing. That's a shame. This is unfortunate because with an hour or two of practice, anyone can acquire this valuable skill. So don't let this put you off. If you don't get grafting the first time, the second time, keep at it. It's really just a mechanical process of lifting larva and placing it. There's selection criteria too. You have to be able to read the larva, understand what size you're looking for. But it's super easy once you get a hang of it. And this is from Tom Glenn, who's grafted thousands and thousands of queens. So what we're going to cover in this section is grafting. And for those that don't feel comfortable grafting, I'm going to introduce a couple topics that you can achieve getting that right age larva into a cell builder without having to lift the grafting tool. So this is when we want to talk about the various tools. You have a tool that Ruth provided with this course. It's referred to as a Chinese grafting tool. We're going to talk techniques, and we're going to tell you what to look for in terms of selecting larvae. So, So we understand the need to build good cells. We need to build good cells. Now we need to provide the raw material. The raw material is that day 4 larva, right? On the 4th day of queen development, we're going to try to get that 12 to 24-hour-old larva. Nothing beyond 24, because remember that chart from Tarpey, it drops off very quickly, and you're making intercast queens, and we don't make intercast queens. The next several slides are about getting 1-day-old larva and placing in the cell builder. So we have 2 different techniques I'm going to talk about, grafting and non-grafting. So here are some of the tools. Ruth was gracious enough to not only provide you with some, but she also provided some samples of stuff up here.
Yeah, go ahead and pass them around while you're talking.
Great. Want me to take them out of the bag?
That's fine.
Or why don't you take them out of the bag? I'll keep jabbing Roy up here. This is a different. I have this stainless steel, so this is one that Ruth provided. It's slightly different. It looks pretty nice, actually. It's got a nice knurled barrel to it here. It gives you kind of a nice feel in your hand. One issue I have possibly with it is that the blade seems a little thick. I like to have the blade a little sharper. You'll have to get this blade underneath the larva and scoop them up. But I think it's a pretty nice tool. And where did you get these, Ruth?
eBay.
These are all eBay? You want me to open this one too?
That's
right?
fine.
Yeah.
Ruth, do you sell these down at the garden center?
No.
Now I brought in some tools as well, and
When do you use
Not-
that one, and when do you use?
He's gonna go through, there's
Looks like
different
you can get it from
techniques.
a dentist's office or a drugstore.
Yeah, some people use the dental picks for the silver ones, and everybody develops their own little technique. The Chinese grafting tool is the least expensive one, and I think it's probably the easiest one for newbies that have a pool of royal jelly, because it just picks them up. But the others, most of the professionals use the other ones, not the Chinese grafting tool.
so this tool right here, it's a different color, but it's this one right here. You can buy this, Man Lake, other beauty supply companies sell this. It's called the JZBZ plastic grafting tool. It's very similar to the blue-handled one Ruth says going around. This one, I think this is a little better than the blue one, because if you look at this carefully, I'll pass this around as well. The magic you're looking for is this little tiny tip of it. It's see how this thing goes down like that, then horizontal and then vertical. And at the base of that last vertical thing, there's a little tiny tab, and it's super, super tiny. I can hardly see it with my bad eyes. So look at that. That's the tool I prefer. And don't assume that you should use this tool. I say use the tool you're most comfortable with. I have taught classes on QueenRearing with grafting. So it was a full day. The morning section was basically some of the material I talked about here, and the afternoon was actually grafting. And I gave the students 3 tools to choose from. The stainless steel tool, like, is going around, same basic thing. The Chinese tool, which you guys have, and my favorite, the JZBZ plastic tool. And I allowed them to use each of the 3. Some immediately took to that Chinese tool instantaneously. They're grafting beautifully. Others went for this. I even had some go with the stainless steel tool. So it's whatever gets the job done for you. What is you find easiest to transfer that larva. There's no magic here. You just go underneath the larva and lift it up. That's it. So whatever you do to do that. Christine, you said you like this one, right?
Did you want to get the scoop to get the royal jelly too?
Yeah, we'll talk more about kind of the attributes of getting the larva out. So the tip of it.
The Chinese has got bamboo right on the end. Doesn't it wear out after a while where the others don't?
Chinese tools will wear. Sometimes they wear for the better, sometimes they wear for the worse. Now these Chinese tools are very temperamental in the sense that you can buy 3 of these and none of them behave the same. That's my problem with them, honestly. I think when you find one that works super well, treat it like $1 million basically. Because once you find one that works well, it'll generally work well for a while, and then it'll start to fade. There's some YouTube videos of some guy who has one of these, he uses it so much, the tip is kind of split like a snake's tongue, and he's still grafting larva with it, just because it works so well for him. But honestly, if you find one that works, it works well. A lot of these right on the box don't work so great, but don't be disappointed if the one you have is one that doesn't work super great right on a box. You can modify these a little bit. Sometimes you can take a razor blade and kind of just slightly just kind of scrape the blade almost perpendicular to this flexible tongue here. Make it a little thinner, make it more likely to bend, because the idea is, so the cell walls are like this. You bring this tool down, and it's going to hit the base, the bottom of the cell, and it has to bend over and go right underneath the larva. And then you just pull it straight up. And so if it doesn't bend when it hits the bottom, sometimes it'll buckle. You kind of have to tweak it a little bit and bend it so there's a little initial curvature to the tongue, so it starts transitioning along the bottom of that cell. So it's a little tricky sometimes. I do prefer the JZBZ just because I find it easier for me. There's no other reason than that. It just works better for me.
So you're really pulling the larva in the jelly.
So the Chinese tool does exactly that. It slides. I have a graphic later. The Chinese tool slides down the cell, hits the bottom, and it scrapes along the bottom of the cell, thereby taking most of the jelly and the larva, puts it right on the little flexible tip of that thing. So when you extract it out of the cell, the larva's sitting there in a pool of jelly, and then you use the plunger thing to, once you put it in a cell cup, your plastic cell cup, you just press the plunger and you place it right in the center of that cell cup. So you push off the larva and the royal jelly together. Now the plastic JZBZ that's going around, that doesn't have the same mechanism. It's just a little tiny tip on it. So what you're doing on this is the larva's sitting there, you come underneath the larva and lift her up. That's it. So she stays right on the tip of this thing. And you're not going to lift a lot of royal jelly with that tiny little tip. So the trick then for using that tool is getting the larva off. Sounds like it's trivial, but that's the hardest part of using the JZBZ tool. So when using that tool, I what's called prime the cells. What that means is, in each one of these cell cups, I put a little tiny bit of royal jelly in the very bottom of the cell, the center bottom of the cell. And where did I get that royal jelly from?
You saved it from the Queen's house.
There you go! I have that magic frame, right? That center frame that has all the floating royal jelly in it, right?
You told your wife
Remember
not to eat it all.
that open groove frame has all that royal jelly? That's where I get the royal jelly to prime those cells when I use that plastic JZBZ tool.
What's the shelf life of that royal jelly in the refrigerator?
Honestly, my wife takes most of that. I almost never reuse that because the methods that I use produce so much copious amounts of royal jelly. Every time I grab it, I have it right in front of me.
Most of them will say about 30 days in the refrigerator, but some people even use yogurt instead of royal jelly, or they prime them with water. So there's other options besides the royal jelly, but I wouldn't leave it more than 30 days. You know, just get other swarm cells.
How much do you prime it with? And how?
So I use the same tool I graft with to prime. So you can imagine there's not a lot of royal jelly I'm lifting up. So I do like maybe 2 scoops of royal jelly. So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little spot of royal jelly. All you want, I'm not trying to do the nurse bees work for them. I'm just providing some sort of stiction. So the tip of the larva hits that viscous royal jelly and comes off. Some surface tension between the larva and the royal jelly allows it to come off my tool. Because if you try to touch it to the cup with no royal jelly, you kind of have to really manipulate the tool to get, because the larva is so tiny, the tips of the larva are almost barely off this bent little tab here. So it's hard to, without any royal jelly, it's hard to get the larva to kind of adhere to the plastic. That's how I see it. So use the tool you had, try it, and just see how it works for you. Yes, Chuck?
Assuming you control your shaking hand, is eye magnification helpful?
Oh, yes. Yes. When I first started grafting, I was able to see without any problem, but now I use this. I bought this from Brushy Mountain, who of course is no longer in business, but you can get something like this on eBay. It's super high magnification, man. I mean, this and a flashlight in one hand, I mean, that's all I
It
need.
has a light on.
Harbor Freight carries that work for it.
Harbor Freight had that.
Harbor Freight has this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one, I guess the nice thing about it is, like, there's 4 different lenses that you can just pop in there, so if, depending on your eyesight, how much magnification you need.
What's it called?
This?
What's it called?
It's a magnification device, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I bought it at Brushy Mountain. Brushy Mountain's out of business now, so I don't know where you might get this exact thing. Yes?
We mentioned that you can find that at Harbor Freight and other hobby shops, like anything that makes, like cars or airplanes.
Gotcha.
has those.
Gotcha. Now, does it have the adjustable magnification?
Yes.
It
The
does.
one at Harbor Freight is not, the one at the hobby shops should.
Okay, all right, great. How much is it, do you know?
I know the one at Harbor Freight, like,
How much?
the one at Harbor Freight that has one magnification is like $10.
10, okay.
Yeah.
How about the Hobby Lobby has them?
Hobby
Hobby
Lobby.
Lobby also has them.
Yeah, this was like $40 for this thing. It was really overpriced, but it does have the different lenses. But, yeah,
So how does it adjust?
it's stuck in there. You just pop it off.
No, you said adjust magnification. If you
Oh,
put another one,
there's different lenses here. Pop in different lenses.
but not.
All right, we're gonna talk more technique. No, this gentleman here, I'm sorry.
The yoga statement, plain yoga?
I don't want to get into that now. Look it up on eBay. There, some people mix it. You know, the water can't be chlorinated, so I don't want to get into that right now. So, but just look it up on the internet.
But if you follow what I've taught so far, you're gonna have all the royal jelly you ever can need. So, yeah.
And more.
Hey, so when you're using this, like the JZ and the VZ, are you unhooking it or?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so it's a really, really
Because
tiny
it's sitting on a little
tab.
shelf.
Yeah, the larva's sitting in a little cup like that, and little tiny, partial C-shaped thing. You come in from behind it, so the opposite side of the C. If you don't really want a full C, but you want kind of just like that, and you just simply pick it up. And then you transfer it to the cup, and you release it into the royal jelly that you're trying to sell with. Yes, sir.
What is the odds that you could damage the larva?
Pretty good.
It depends. I mean, what you want to 100% avoid is what's called flipping the larva. So you want to maintain the proper orientation. There is an up and a down to larva, believe it or not. The right side and wrong side. You want to keep the right side facing up. And so you lift it up like that, and you transfer it, and you set it down in the cell, so it's facing the same direction it was originally. Some people will flip it like that, and if you do, Ruth has a great video on this. Are you going to be able to show that or not?
I will include it.
Okay. She has a great video on queen bee larvae actually feeding, and you can actually see the spiracles on the side of that larva breathing, you know, so it's a really close-up view of a queen larva feeding. But if you flip it, you're going to suffocate it. So you have to keep it in the same orientation as it was when you pulled it out of the cell.
The little hook doesn't actually stick into the larva.
No, the hook, I mean, it's magnified here. The hook goes underneath the larva and just lifts it like that. It's not really a hook, it's a perpendicular tab, basically. Did you see the JZBZ yet? Yeah. And the other one, yeah, the blue ones. Same basic thing on this one. Has the same kind of tab there. And you know, you just put that little tab underneath the larva and just lift it straight up. And then the trick is getting it off. That's the trickier part on these.
So does the larva slide out for a reason?
That's when having that slight pool of royal jelly is very helpful, because then all you got to do is like touch the outer tip. So you're carrying it from the back side. I mean, the larva's like that at the base of the cup. You grab it and you carry it like that, and then you touch it down. You touch kind of the tip of the larva, and then it'll kind of get some stiction and allow you to pull the tool away. That's basically it. Now, the Chinese tool, you don't have to mess around with that basically. You just push the Chinese tool straight down. It'll go down the side of the cell wall, hit the bottom of the cell, and scoop underneath the larva. And you just retract it out, and you look at it. There's the larva and royal jelly all in one. You put it in the bottom of your cell cup, positioned in the center as well as possible. And you push the plunger, and you push off the larva and the royal jelly. So this is what Ruth provides you with. She provides something that's like this, a bar to mount these cups in. There's two, just a warning here, there's two types of JZBZ cups. There's the base mount, which Ruth provided for you, and there's also the push-in style cups. The push-in style are not going to fit your cell bar, okay? So don't go to Man Lake and order the wrong one. You'll have 100 cups you can't use. Now if you go to Scientific Beekeeping, Randy Oliver's site, he has a technique, it's Queens for a Penny, I think is the title of the article. And he uses these, he takes a regular frame and just kind of scores it with his hive tool, and he places these push-in cups right above that scored frame where he ripped the comb off down to the plastic foundation. That's how he does it. Randy Oliver's a pretty smart guy, so it must work. So you guys have a wooden cell bar. This is a JZBZ plastic cell bar. They both work. I use this type because that's what I bought. I don't have anything against it. Plastic or wood doesn't matter to me. So now we're going to talk kind of details of transfer R. We've already talked a lot about this already. But as Chuck kind of alluded to, this whole process can get you nervous, right? It's kind of twitch. Sometimes I even find myself, my hand shakes a little bit. Just relax, turn on some good music, find a place where you're comfortable. I do it in my kitchen, air conditioning. I don't want to do it in the bed of my or cab of my truck. I'd rather just sit in a place where I'm comfortable. I have good lighting. What I use is, in addition to high magnification, I have a high intensity flashlight. So when I graph, this is how I look. I have this on, like this, my JZBZ cup. I have a massive high lumen flashlight right down in the cell, and I do this. That's how I do it. So that's what I use. You don't have to do that. I found the little headlamp on this thing worthless. I found that a better headlamp like this also doesn't work for me. You can look on YouTube and see a lot of people using headlamps like this that just go on like that. The thing that doesn't work for me is where I'm looking is not really where my hand is kind of moving. I want to have more degrees of freedom of light in my hand. That's why I like to have a separate flashlight. That's just me. Maybe I'm deficient in my motor skills or something, but that's how I like to do it. And we talked about make sure the larvae doesn't expose to extreme temperatures and do not let them dry out. It can happen quickly. Warm, damp cloth covering the grass. We talked about that earlier today. Good lighting is essential. Good lighting, either an ambient light from where you're grafting, or a flashlight, or a headlamp, or something. Some sort of application. Primer, not primer. We talked about these really already. Depends on the tool. The JZBZ and the stainless steel tool, I think, require some priming. Again, the methods we talked about for building cells will have lots of royal jelly readily available. The Chinese tool works well without grafting. Another thing that I do, I'll have in my toolbox is I have very, very sharp razor blades. These are X-Acto razor knives. And when I'm pulling larvae out of the cell, I'll actually go in and kind of razor cut the cell walls around that larva. It just gives me more light, more visibility, and more access to the cell. Most people don't do this, so I don't want to give you a bad habit. Try it without, and if you struggle doing it without cutting down the cell walls, cut the cell walls down. But don't take
You're
that.
talking cell walls on the comb itself.
Yeah, so you're grafting out of a frame, right? That frame has day-old larvae, right? 12 to 24-hour larvae there, and they're in the bottom of the cell. You can graft right out of that bottom of the cell, or you can knock the walls down a little bit with a knife. That's how I do it. Yes, Ruth?
One other thing for the group, with the Chinese grafting tool, it works best in older brood comb, which is harder to slice back. But if you use the Chinese grafting tool in a newly drawn one, it just punches right through. So
Right.
keep that in mind.
Yes?
Is that royal jelly sticky enough, because, these things are gonna be upside down? What keeps that larva from
Oh.
coming out?
Now, royal jelly is viscous enough that the larva won't drip down the side of the cell. That's what you're worried about. No, it's
So when you
definitely
put that
viscous
stuff,
enough.
They're good to go.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
No epoxy needed.
That's right. So, that's just how I do it. I trim the cells, I prime it, use the JZBZ, but I think when you see someone on YouTube that's a master with the Chinese tool, that's just really a thing of beauty, man. It's ping, ping, ping. It's, I'm not that fast, but I don't really need to be, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not getting paid by the hour on that one.
We're doing 5 or 10 grafts anyhow, right?
You're gonna do 10 grafts, yeah. That's all you're allowed to do, Terry.
This Chinese grafting tool, is that like the same thing you use in the orange boxes?
Pollinating?
You do it by hand?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm guessing that's where,
I'm not sure of the origin of the tool. I have no idea on that, honestly. So, now we know the mechanics of doing what we're doing. Now we need to do the other part of making the proper selection. Remember, 12 to 24-hour larva is our target. This is an egg. This is what the larva looks like relative to an egg. Basically exactly the same size, kind of the same diameter, nearly the same profile. It's just slightly curved, right? The slight curve to it. It's going to be laying horizontally in the base of the cup. But my point of this slide is these two are about the same size. Look in the frame, find eggs. Go into the cells around that egg, find something that's about the same size as that egg.
So an egg harvester will not?
No, you cannot pull an egg out and put it in the cell. So, ideally, where are you going to find the properly aged larva? Right next to the eggs. If a queen is laying, and what she should be laying is kind of a concentric ring of eggs, or a very localized spot, you'll be able to find eggs very easily, and then there's going to be a boundary between eggs, larva. On that boundary, egg larva boundary, those are most likely going to be the smallest, youngest larva. So that's where you want to look, okay? This is much clearer on my screen. Is there any way to make that a little more focused?
Sean, I am going to send them that video, that YouTube video, so they have it at home to look at,
Okay.
the right ones.
John, this is a small point for me.
Sure.
I was doing some studying and trying to pick out the larva until the guy that was explaining says, we always say a loose C as you had, or slight C, but he says, what I look for the new beginner is more of an apostrophe. It's a slight mark. And when he did that, then I could start picking them all out.
Right,
Tell the
right.
difference, because I was concentrating on the C-ness and trying to determine the smallness or the relatively young, but then once he said it was more of an apostrophe. So
That's a good point. It's not a C. It is certainly not a C. It's more of a, it has some curve to it. It's not going to be like that. It's going to have a little curve to it. But,
Is that oriented the right way?
so this will be vertical. The egg will be poking right up on the bottom of the cell, and this will be laying down, okay?
Now you're talking about not putting them upside down.
Not flipping it. So they naturally fall to the proper side, and they start breeding on that side. I believe they can flip either way and breed from that side, but once they start, they don't change. So my grafting tool, I would come in right here on this side of the larva and graft that way. I would not come on this side. It's just harder to get them off because I have these things that are easy to touch the bottom of the cell, the ends of the larva. That's how I do it. Experiment.
So Sean, on that there,
You take your X-Acto and cut away the cell.
Yes, what I would do, my X-Acto, without cutting our screen here, I would just kind of knock down this wall right here. We can knock down even this much right here. And then I'd come and have much more access coming behind the larva. That's just how I do. Good grafters don't need to do that.
Of course, it's easily repairable by the bees,
Oh,
right?
they don't even blink an eye at that. Yeah, they're just,
Yeah.
they take care of that in a second.
Would small tweezers work better?
No,
Are
you
you
don't
worried about
ever
crushing
want to
it?
squeeze anything. It can't really be touched. Ideally, you don't want to touch the larva much. In the JZBZ tool, even though it doesn't take a lot of royal jelly, there's going to be a slight layer of royal jelly between the larva and the tip of the tool. You don't ever want a dry draft, that is, larva on tool kind of thing. And certainly no squeezing mechanism, nothing to put pressure on the larva, you're just simply lifting it underneath it.
So, the upper row, are those two, that's too much of a seed? Those
So
are
yeah,
too
so
long.
the question here, I don't know if you guys can see this in the back very well. It's super crisp on my screen, but I don't know if you can see it. The question is, are there any good ones here?
One. Bottom
Bottom,
Bottom
second from the left.
Second from the left. The bottom left.
This one here?
Yeah,
Bottom right.
This one?
Bottom
Oh, this one
right.
here?
Yeah.
Maybe, you can't see that.
Any other guesses?
Bottom right,
Or
definitely.
maybe the bottom.
Middle.
Right.
Top left,
Next
east,
one.
This one?
Yeah.
No.
Center, middle, right.
Center, middle, right. This one?
Borrow.
I can't really see that well.
Bottom
I
right,
kind of exclude these two, I can't see them well. I would say maybe that one, maybe. Borderline, honestly, too big.
Really?
Yeah, that's borderline. There's no cell there.
You said that.
Too big, too big, too big, definitely too big, massively too big. Definitely too big, maybe that one. Maybe, if I was desperate, and I shouldn't be desperate.
Now, is it going more off size or shape? Or both?
Mostly both. It's a little too seed for my taste, that's the concern about that one. It's a little more, it's got almost a full seed going.
Are those eggs in the previous picture, are they ruined?
No, they're not ruined, absolutely not.
You can put them back.
Yeah, you're gonna have a warm towel over this too if you want,
Uh-huh.
so that will keep them nice and moist. So you're gonna be grafting on this side of the egg larva boundary. You're gonna graft these and anything that's over there that's of a proper size. This stuff here is gonna be totally untouched. That goes right back in the colony and no rear young from that.
If the temperature is 90+ degrees and they're, what they're supposed to be in, are you working in a 90-degree area?
No, I'm bringing in a nice, comfortable, air-conditioned space.
So that doesn't affect the eggs to have?
The larvae are actually fairly insensitive to lower temperatures. It's when you get to extreme temperature, and particularly the real killer is dryness. Yep, yep. So we kind of ruled out most of those, right? I mean, there's one if we're desperate, and we shouldn't be desperate. We should really